Hi, good evening. Hey, Saloni. Hi, good evening.
Good evening, Prakhar.
Yeah, good. We have all the
All the
attendees here.
ones.
We can begin. Yes,
Can we
Saloni.
start?
Absolutely. We must start on time.
Okay, so everyone, good evening, everyone. A very warm welcome to all of you. And thank you for taking out time to join us today. I'm Saloni Shah, Academic Consultant at Educational Initiatives, also called as EI. And I'm truly excited to be hosting this session along with my colleague Prakhar, who will be co-conducting this webinar with me. So Prakhar has been with educational initiatives for over a decade, and he is deeply interested in how children learn and teachers think. He works very closely with schools to build robust assessment systems and transform insights from assessments to measurable learning outcomes. So today we look forward to an engaging and insightful evening with all of you. So to begin with, let me just share my screen. So, teachers, as you might have noticed, there is a lot of discussion in academic circles recently around SAFAL. And rightly so, SAFAL, which stands for Structured Assessment for Analyzing Learning, has emerged as a key element of the National Education Policy 2020 and is now being actively implemented by CBSE. So, today's session is designed to help you decode what SAFAL is all about. It will also help you to explore key stage assessments and, more importantly, reflect on practical skill building strategies that can truly work in your classrooms. So, to test and to set the context, the NEP 2020 marks a significant shift in the way we approach education in India. It emphasizes competency based learning, critical thinking, and holistic development over rote memorization. SAFL is actually a direct response to this shift. It aims to bring structured, periodic, and skill oriented assessments to better understand how students are actually really learning. So, in today's webinar, we will try to simplify the intent and design of SAFL. We will also understand how key stage assessments can serve as powerful checkpoints, not just for students, but also for schools to realign their teaching methodologies. So, as we see, the National Education Policy, which has now having the key overall thrust of curriculum and pedagogy reform across all stages, will be to move education system towards actually real understanding and towards learning on how to learn, and also away from the culture of rote learning as largely present today. So we'll concentrate on all of this. And as we go through this journey together, we will also share how educational initiatives through asset ecosystem has been supporting schools across India in making this shift from rote learning to meaningful, impactful learning. So teachers, in case if you have any questions during the session, please feel free to type them in the question and answer segment given in the box down there. We will address them as we go along or during the Q&A segment. So once again, thank you for being here. We hope this session sparks new ideas, clear doubts, and help you walk away with clear practical takeaways to implement in your school. So let's begin the journey of decoding SAFL together. Also, teachers, please note at the end of the session, we have a feedback form being shared. I'll be sharing that form on the chat box. So please have a look at it. Please enter your email address correctly so that you will be able to receive your certificates accordingly with your correct name as well. So, Prakhar, to start with, we have seen so many changes in the landscape of assessments over the last few years. So, I have a question in my mind, like, why are these changes actually happening? And what do you think exactly is SAFL KSA? Like, a lot of terms. So, if you can just elaborate.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Saloni, and a very warm welcome to all the participants today. I'll also, I think, clarify this point. We are not very keen in terms of understanding the logistics of SAFL, but I think we'll be able to decipher and decode what are some of the good practices where a school can come and leverage an assessment like SAFAL, and why the landscape of assessment is changing. What can I do as a teacher? Feel free to ask your questions. We have been doing this for almost 24 years now. I've been with EI. I have had an opportunity and privilege to reach out to schools and help them build ecosystems of assessments, and that's where I'm very interested in. Saloni, SAFAL now, interestingly, is a mandate for class 6 and 9 for all CBSE schools. Another very interesting thing around this, when we talk about new education policy, and I think this is true for any policy, any framework across the globe, we have some believers, we have some skeptics, we have some naysayers. I'm happy to see SAFAL as the next point of action at the ground level, which comes from new education policy. And since I'm an inherent optimist, I think this is a good step. And before we begin, I think one of the most common feeling and question which I've come across so far is talking about things like, hey, but we start with a lot of policies, it will eventually wane out. How do we begin? But I think a lot of schools are already doing these good practices. The idea is not to have this webinar or do something because SAFAL is coming. I think because these are things which are essential to be done by any progressive school. SAFAL is a good support, good nudge. And how can we leverage this? Let me quickly share my slides with everyone here. And when we are talking about what's changing, I think the skills required today are changing. Times have changed. I don't think our children will be seen in a role like this, or perhaps doing cartography. I don't think our children tomorrow will become sailors in this stance. Even if they become sailors, the skills required will be very different, right? But high chances of our children can be becoming a pilot, perhaps. He becoming a house husband or working from home. She becoming a football player, or somebody becoming a surgeon, right? While these roles are changing, we need to assess and we need to impart skills which are based on 21st century skills. While this is very commonsensical, we always understand there has to be some stimulus which leads to some reaction. Things do not happen without anything which has a strong impetus or a strong force. And that's why we are saying, and I think we would have come across activities like this when we were in school. I happened to do this. And we'll get into the idea of what is conceptual, procedural, and skill as part of the conversation. It's not about what is good or bad. As long as we are not limiting ourselves to only one thing and not leaning towards rote learning, I think competencies are very powerful. Vis-a-vis this, or along with this, it is also important to ensure that our children understand. If I go to somebody and say, hey, which states in India have the potential to develop mountain ranges like Himalayas over geological time? If they're able to understand, they'll be able to at least think, question, and it's not about the right answer. Another shift which is happening because of an assessment like uh, SAFAL or PISA or third-party assessments like ACIT, instead of saying how many marks did I get, the classroom conversations are changing along with the staff room conversations. Teachers are also coming back and saying, hey, but what is the skill which this question is testing? And that's a welcoming step. And while we are saying the landscape is changing, this is not just the one thing which is theoretical and a good to have principle. We also understand that this is coming because of a lot of reports across the world. We all have heard about India's performance in 2009, 2010 PISA, where we came just before a country called Kyrgyzstan. And our initial first reaction was, okay, there were multiple reasons. We are a country with high population. Then we realized China also does extremely well in a test like PISA. In fact, the same year, China also participated for the first time in PISA. And they were in top 5. Then we said, hey, but India is a very poor country. Then we realized Vietnam, Estonia, and countries like Vietnam, Estonia do extremely well. Then we realized, hey, our country classrooms are extremely large like China. Then we said, it doesn't happen in a mother tongue. And that's true for a large number of countries. Then we see, please understand, India is a huge potential to grow. India is at the cusp of becoming a superpower if it goes in the right direction. And these children are the people who will take this baton to the next level. And that's why this was one of the eye opener and one of the preceding step of a lot of changes. And we have seen things like what Saloni you were talking about, changing board exams, CUET being introduced, all coming from new education policy. That's why I'm an optimist when I look at a framework or a policy like new education policy. Also in tests like ACIT, where one question on the left, and I'll pause here for everyone to quickly read this. When we say, hey, what is the perimeter of this rectangle? Our performance on an average is across 78%, which is a textbook question. Again, please don't see this as a lot of people come back and ask, but don't we need procedural information? Yes, but the problem is if we are able to have just the procedural ability, it's never either or. Either is when we ask the question on the right, which is little unfamiliar and saying, hey, here are three shapes, which one of them has a perimeter? And across a large sample size, not even 20% of the students were able to identify and answer this. So this shows us huge gap in terms of conceptual understanding, students' ability to produce results, right? Not only this, there has been reports by India Today, which was again based on asset research, where class 8 student, around 51% came back and said, hey, pure steam doesn't have a chemical formula. When we spoke to them, they said, but this is out of syllabus. You ask me what formula of water and I can give you. And this is happening at different points in space and time, right? This is an interesting LinkedIn feed by somebody called Bisma Farid, which got very viral recently. In her words, she says, hey, I'm a topper and mujhe naukri nahi mil rahi hai. And she had her certificates, Olympiad medals and things like that. Again, one question which comes pretty often, are Olympiads good or bad? Competitions are good if you are somebody who's focusing on that. It's not something, because it's meant for, it's like a race. But if you ask from global acceptance of Olympiads, until and unless it's an international Olympiad, they do not have much focus until unless they are built to diagnose. But it's like a race. If you are somebody like Usain Bolt, your purpose is to just compete, you are in the top 1 percentile of the world, please take Olympiads. Please take some of the best Olympiads in the world. The international Olympiads. India does very well in them also, by the way. And this is not an Indian phenomenon. Marisa Messina is a student from Stanford University. In her life, and I'm talking about somebody at Stanford, who is also saying, hey, I'm 29, I've spent the past 7 years filling in the gaps. My 18 years in a classroom left. So SAFAL is happening in India now, but this is a global phenomenon, which is a key stage check, a key stage assessment. It's like a milestone. So if you look this in form of analogy, Saloni, what we are saying is, imagine I'm in journey from class 1 to 12, I'm driving. At what time do you think I should look back and understand whether I'm in the right direction or not? Obviously not in class 10th and 12th, right? What we obviously want is have GPS throughout the journey, have milestones at important points, and that's what key stage assessments do. And it has been in practice across the world. Cambridge assessments have embedded key stage assessments or Cambridge checkpoints. UK talks about checkpoints and key stage assessment. Inherently, they were talking about foundational learning, which is important. That is the foundational learning developed. And they have had these developmental milestones. But eventually, now they're saying, hey, can we look at these checkpoints to also assess the key competencies, what is happening? Are children developing these key competencies or not? We often come across people saying, hey, children today are not employable. Every year we'll say such a ABC university did not employ, was not able to employ so many students. We hear people from corporate coming back and telling us, hey, this is not happening and children are not ready for the real-time job. We have some Indian tech giants who spend almost 1 year training these graduates. Imagine the kind of money and time which is wasted. While this is happening at different points in space and time, new education policy is saying, hey, let's do something. Let's correct this. Obviously, it's not a silver bullet. It takes time. But it is saying that key stage assessments are important. SAFAL is a very important step. And it's saying, hey, can we change something in our classroom, in practice? And that's why SAFAL comes in place. And it talks about testing core concepts and move away from rote learning. Are you testing what is important? Also, are you testing in unfamiliar context? And they're saying this is mandatory for government and private school, any CBSE school as of now. And they're saying these are low stake things, which means SAFAL data will not be used to promote or demote anybody. It's like a blood test. Prakhar goes to a doctor and Prakhar realizes hemoglobin is low. I don't get reprimanded. My doctor will not come back and say, Prakhar, please call your parents tomorrow. If my hemoglobin is 21 or whatever good in number, I don't get a gold medal for it. So it's saying it's a GPS. It will help give us data to understand and help schools in terms of teacher training, curriculum. By the way, a lot of schools are already doing it. It's good to see there is an external system, external practice, which is helping our schools to start this journey of assessments, Saloni. I hope I was able to set the context of why SAFAL and why now.
Correct, Prakhar. Like this was too informative. In fact, I was actually shocked to see the PISA results, to see the data also, like how students are not receiving jobs even after scoring so much of marks and everything. And that's why I actually feel now that yes, exams like SAFL are very much important. So Prathar, talking about SAFL, what is this like? Is this just another exam that will just come and go, or how will it actually change our classrooms? I'm sure like we all have examples of good practices. So do you have any stories of change that have really stayed with you? If you can, just throw some light on that.
Like I said, I come across this pretty often and I understand where this comes from. Because there's something called recency effect. I think school teachers had invested a lot of activities which get started. Sometimes it gets waned out. So you often go back and say, is this even working? But I think that's where good schools who have used these ideas effectively use this in their favor, because a policy can just tell you what are the good things, right? And a framework can give you and assist you, and these are nudges. Like CBSE, for example, has made it mandatory. So a good school, what will do, they will have checkpoints in all the classes. And I'm sure a lot of schools already have that. I should not do this. In fact, like I started my conversation, this webinar is not for the purpose of how to score well in SAFAL in the coming round. We are saying, hey, this is a good opportunity. It's a good way of looking at assessments. It's a good way of changing our teaching learning practices. And the classroom conversation, I've seen this changing, Saloni. Instead of teachers talking and saying, hey, what's the mark? They're saying, hey, but this question, can I put it? Is it testing something important? Will it give me some important feedback? These conversations have started changing in our classroom. Give me a second and I'll show you something which might help. And I always see whenever you talk about behavioral change or whenever you talk about macro changes. So I think some changing behavior of successful 21st century schools, if you ask me, I think this stimulus is more or less standardized across the world. We know the world economy no longer rewards people for what they know in their head. And thanks to AI, this is now just in our face. We can see it happening. We'll say information, I have ChatGPT on my mobile, I can give you. Just ask for it. I don't even have to go to across 20 pages, scroll down and try and find out what's happening. I have information with the specific answer. Obviously, the accuracy will change. The expert will use it differently. My ability to identify what's true and what's not true in that answer, is it giving me a biased response, will change. But what children can do and what can they do now is an important stimulus. And this is not for India. This is for countries across the world. It's a pertinent question which everyone around us is asking. The response is, we do not want to know if you have stored information. And that's why you have seen assessments changing. And it is a slow paced process if you look at the macro thing. But if you look at I've had an opportunity to not only work with school assessments, but also some high stake assessments. I have seen what's changing in the assessments for these people. Obviously, because we want to understand, are these children ready to understand what I'm teaching? Because that skill has changed. And are they able to connect this in the real life situation? So that response changes with us. And why I'm emphasizing two things, that staff room goal. So basically, what is the goal for a teacher? Now, emphatically across the globe, we are saying the goal of a teacher is to nurture understanding and have transferable skills. You have understood fractions, fine. Can you apply it in real life? Have you understood? You are good at reading comprehension. What does it look like? It's not about going to a question, reading the passage, and then underlining and answering. Are you able to infer the text? And I will show you some questions as part of our conversations today to elicit what does these skills look like? What does transferability mean? I cannot say, oh, I know how to ride a bicycle, but I can't take it on the road. I forgot. I am very scared. Maybe I don't have enough practice. So that's why people are saying, if you are able to do it, can you show it to me in different things? And that's why all teachers would have come across the changing report card also. So if you see, the whole ecosystem is changing. So it's the smartest thing to do is catch up to the speed, be somebody who's more proactive and leverage these changes. And the outcome is also changing. We'll say students will be able to show up and apply in unfamiliar context to real world problems. Can they justify evidence? Can they select the right evidence? Can they transfer ideas across subjects? And if you see, again, this is true in new education policy also. If you see, a lot of schools are already talking about interdisciplinary activities. So new education policy is a good starting point. And that's why people are saying, I can't say, oh, I know this. It's like, it's funny that I can say I'm good in class 5 and 8 fraction, but if I'm cooking for 5 people and suddenly 2 more people come, I can't solve the problem because I know fractions in textbook. Or people say, oh, you are asking a lot of reading comprehension, which are unseen passages in ACID. My children are able to read only those textbooks, they are good at it. Then it's something else, but not reading communication. And our children able to articulate. So this is something which has been changing around us. School who have been using key stage assessment, Saloni, I've seen few changes. And these are so vivid. These are so much, what do you call, visible in front of you. That's the delight to watch. And it takes time by the way. It usually takes almost 3 years for a school to catch up to this idea. It starts from a lot of resistance, everyone struggling. The school head, the teachers, the students, the parents, everyone who's part of the ecosystem, but slowly you'll see a lot of changes. Some of the changes are, you'll hear more why in questions or in class. We often say this, right? We want children to ask questions, but assessments like SAFAL and good practices can help you change this, but it takes time. Your lesson plan will change at how, what all do I need to teach in this chapter, from can I have a coaching mentality? Can I ensure whatever I'm teaching? Can I also look at the skill concept component to it? By the way, concept and skill go hand in hand. People often talk about critical thinking in the same way, and I think there's a lot of confusion. People assume critical thinking will happen outside English, math, science, social science, and computational thinking and history, civics, geography. That's not true. You cannot think critically outside any of this context. If I can think critically as a heart surgeon, doesn't mean I'll immediately start thinking as a plumber or a carpenter. Everyone can think critically in some context. And our background knowledge, that's why the idea of some children's ability in reading comprehension, one of the common denominator is background knowledge or prior knowledge. If you do not have that prior knowledge, you cannot. So a lot of people say it's either skill or concept. Should I explain them least common multiple and highest common factor, or should I ask them to apply? They're all part of the same strand. They go hand in hand. Another good part of which happens with the schools is teaching will become more of an iterative design than a performance art. I think when we think teaching. So PISA has been saying this, TIMS has been saying this, globally people are saying this. Teaching is not less of an art, but more of science. A doctor doesn't tomorrow's, well, how will a doctor grow? They'll say, I need to read more. I need to understand the most updated research happening in medical science. Similarly, teaching will change accordingly. For example, Singapore started at one point of time with an activity called streaming, where I pick up all bright students and put them in one class. After a few years, they realized, hey, this is a poor practice. And this came from data. Otherwise, even if you are right, your opinion is as good as my opinion, right? How do we solve for it? And that's why another thing which SAFAL is trying to do, it's trying to bring a lot of evidence in a teaching learning process. So it's saying teaching will become more of an iterative design. And I've seen schools who use key stage assessments and assessments, diagnostic assessments very well. They sit at the start of the year. Otherwise, how do you start a bridge course? A bridge course is a good idea, and I've seen a lot of schools doing it over a period of time, especially in last 3-4 years. How do you decide what to teach in the bridge course without having data of this cohort? Imagine you have a previous year cohort data learning inside, and their data says that Prakhar and Saloni in class 5 are struggling with this concept. Your ability to make a bridge course increases. How do you train your teachers if you do not know which area are they not able to produce results? And marks is not an outcome. What skill? Can you be more specific? So I think feedback is at the heart of such schools. And we talk about a lot of practices like project-based learning, flip learning, children will read. If skills are developed, then all of this becomes easy. Obviously, if your children can't read well with comprehension, you can't ask them to read chapter and do a flip learning tomorrow. If the children are not able to understand, ask questions, you cannot do project-based learning. So a lot of these fails because skills and competencies are not developed in our children. And talking about does this even show in data, I'll show you two case studies which are very close to my heart, Saloni. This is a school, I'm calling it out ABC. It's a private school. The only difference or interesting part, peculiarity of this school is this school, Saloni, works with the first generation learners across the state. They have an entrance test. So you have to be coming from an underprivileged background. What you see here right now is basically ACID benchmarking. ACID is a test which is taken by almost 4 lakh to 5 lakh students every year. And if you see anything below 95, it means the performance of that class in that subject is below the average of all students in that class. And it's one of the largest sample size of benchmarking in the world, definitely the biggest in the country. And you'll see the first time they took an assessment like ASSET, and imagine how disheartened they would have been. Everything is red. And these were children who are coming from underprivileged background, but these are bright children. I'm using this word bright cautiously because they have used a test to identify these children and select them. Second year, English obviously takes time, social studies and science, but look at maths performance. Look at the number of whites and green increasing everywhere. Because they've started teaching competency. They took a period of 1 year. They looked at this feedback seriously. They started, and you teach the same thing. A good assessment doesn't tell you to change your textbook, or that's not the idea. Idea is, are you teaching to deliver a understanding? And this makes my day whenever I see this data. When you look at the top, this is the third year for the school, and this is the benchmarking for them across the classes. You will see everything. And this is again some of the most progressive schools and top schools in the country. So this shows, can assessments help you grow? Otherwise, how do you grow? You need a third-party assessment or an assessment like SAFAL, where you can say on a comparable scale, as long as the assessment is good and of high quality, and it's a decent sample size, I can see there is some improvement year on year. And at the bottom for the same school, if you see the top 10 benchmarking, now we are not comparing with the overall cohort, but with the top 10 performance, and the schools change every year, right? It's a dynamic process. It's so heartening to see all of them changing. This is one of my favorite case studies, Saloni, when it comes to private schools in India. Another thing which I see as a system, so UAE takes ACID for almost a decade now. And the problem is they started with 2009, they were in top 15 PISA. And they had a very clear mandate that we want to use third-party assessment to feedback this data, these insights back to my classroom teaching learning practices so that we can improve as a system. And they made ACID mandatory. They had other third-party assessment. The government said, use my assessment, but they said insights from third-party assessments are important. 2018, Dubai was 19. Last PISA, Dubai was 14th rank. So I'm showing you a micro place picture of a school. I'm also showing you a macro picture of a large province with a group of schools. So when people ask, hey, this is just another test and can this improve? And this is true for Finland also, by the way. This is true for a country like Estonia, which was struggling once year, and then they started getting a lot of insights from PISA and feedback. They included computational thinking in their curriculum. They started teaching it. You have to teach for skills, by the way. We think that, oh, I'm smart and I'll develop the skill. I wish that was true. You'll have to teach me if it's a skill. You'll have to explain me if it's a concept. And Estonia is in the top 10 across the world when it comes to critical thinking. Singapore and all of the countries have changed. So there are a lot of case studies which tell us that there can be change. And we see this is true across English, math, science, where against Dubai private schools average is higher than the OECD international average. And you see 2018 and the last PISA, I said Dubai came in top 14, and you'll see this growing higher. But this is an interesting phenomena. And can people change? Can schools change? I have so many stories where I've seen this change happening, but it's a slow process. It's not a medicine which I go over the counter, buy tomorrow and change something. And that's where assets as an ecosystem expertise lies in. Understanding that it's like a strand, and I'll also talk about it, that it's teachers capacity building happens parallel to competencies in children while the concept is being taught in the classroom, and they go hand in hand, and we have seen this growing, Saloni.
Correct, Prakhar. So, actually, I feel that such questions are very much important so that, the students have been exposed to such kind of questions right from the beginning. So that, you just showed me that chart showing all green, like the red turning into white and then into green. So, slowly and gradually, if they are being exposed to such kind of questions every now and then, of course, we will see all the schools in the world turning into green very soon. And, this reminds me actually of a very famous saying by John Bates, who says that the learning outcome of students actually depend on, how they think that they will be assessed. So if they think that they'll be assessed on their memorization skills, if they just have to, just copy paste their answers and they think that they'll be assessed on that basis, they'll, of course, it will be a pressure on rote learning. However, if they have to think and answer something, if they have to actually rack their brains and across a answer, so of course they will start thinking in another way that we all want them to think as. And yeah, like even I've been maths teacher for over 6 7 years now, and the same thing that comes to me as a question by students are, maths being a, like, as for students being not so interesting subject, they always have this question that why, ma'am, where are we going to use this in our real life? And so it's very good to actually try to relate questions in a practical world and ask questions in that manner. So, Prathar, like, we have teachers asking questions in our Q&A segments. I have Preeti ma'am asking that there are a lot of teachers who are actually not yet trained well. So, why do you think are we directly starting with assessments before any kind of trainings for the same? In fact, there's a question by me as well. So, if you can just answer.
I think that's a question from all of us some point of time and somewhere. Broadly, because it's very counterintuitive. Otherwise, what is more intuitive is you train the teacher, let the teacher teach, and then take a test. How do you start an assessment? At what point of time do we have an assessment coming early? So I understand where this is coming from. By the way, I get this question pretty often. And at one point of time, I also had this in mind. But like always say, and you were also talking about it, suddenly what you measure grows. And teaching is not a performance art. And I was giving you a medical analogy. It's like if I go to the best doctor in the country, the doctor will also ask me to start with a diagnostic test. They'll say, why don't you come with an X-ray so that I can give you some feedback which is specific and actionable. So starting with an assessment can change the system. In fact, when we were working with CBSE as a board reform project, one of the major suggestion which EI had was, if you change the board exams pattern, if you ask good competency based question, we don't have doubt about teachers' ability. Teachers are good. children will learn whatever you want them to learn. If you ask poor questions in board exam, don't come and talk about good things, because I know eventually what will come in board exam if it's not high quality, and that we have seen changing, right? And that's for true. Whatever you want to measure, it grows. I'll show you some questions. What does this look like in real life? Yeah, is my screen visible, Saloni?
Yes, Pratik.
Yeah. So we have known that, by the way, these are some board exam questions, and we know children can answer these quickly. Whenever very typical textbook questions. And like I said, a good question is at the heart of a good assessment. If you're asking the good question, people will start thinking like that. Everybody will know this is what I am being assessed on. Everybody will have a mental framework of thinking in certain direction. I'll pause here for everyone to read this question from PISA. PISA happens for 15-year-old in OECD countries. I'll give you 2 more minutes to read this because I know this is too much of reading for the first time. While you're reading, somebody is also asking interesting question. Does PISA reflects the quality of education in a country? Yes, it and it does for a large number of countries. And that's the proof that so many progressive countries show this. Another debate or counter argument which people come across is, but uh, India had a huge, beautiful history, which is true, by the way. We talk about Nalanda, we talk about invention of discovery of zero, the Indian value system, decibel system, and things like that, right? We were pretty advanced, which is true. It has no correlation with what is happening today. My grandfather was extremely sharp and good in, let's say, calculus. Doesn't mean I too am good at it, right? Also, another counter argument is, but we have Sundar Pichai, Nandan Nilankani, people look at the top. So India has a very good sorting system. Top 1 percentile of the country does well. Good education system is not about excellence of the top 1 or 10 percentile. Good education system is the difference between these and the children who are not doing well. There is some element of equity, and that's what countries call good education system. By the way, if you are able to read this, and this is what people are expecting when it comes to things like PISA, it says there are slope A and slope B. And you see more vegetation on one side, you have less vegetation on one other side. And they're also talking about different factors which can influence this, right? It says how much sunlight falls on a given location, soil moisture, how wet the soil is given, rainfall, how much rain falls on a given location. And then they are saying student one says and thinks that a difference in soil moisture is due to difference in solar radiation on two slopes. But the student two is saying that the difference in soil moisture is due to difference in rainfall. So a child has to then say, okay, can there be different rainfalls if the slopes are like this? Perhaps yes, only if there is something obstructing between them. They're able to apply. Okay, if there is more evaporation, then there will be less moisture, and they are expected to. So this is being expected, and I'm giving you a sample of a question for 15-year-old, which is coming from PISA. This is an acid question from class 7. I'll again pause here for all of you to read this. And I'm talking about a large sample size of 20,673 students, Saloni. And this asset is taken by private schools in India and outside India. It's one of the biggest diagnostic assessment, key stage assessment. And this is a challenge because this is what is expected. I'm sure all of your schools have fire plan. It is stuck on the wall, believing all of your children can read that. And that's part of reading comprehension, by the way. If children can read that fire exit plan, then there's no something which is not right, which is being taught. And the good part is why I'm showing you all of this. Now, if I know this as a feedback and I believe that I need to teach data interpretation, a teacher can teach this and children can learn this. That's why assessment is a good starting point, Saloni. Before I show you this question, I'll ask all of you and say, if I rub my hands like this, what will happen? Can you just put it in the chat box, in the QA box? If I rub my hands like this, what happens? Saloni, let me know if there are some points.
Friction. We have
Friction, and what will happen?
I'm reading out the answers.
Heat is generated due
Friction,
to friction.
evaporation. Heat is generated due to friction. You will feel warmth.
Perfect.
Heat is
Everybody knows this, irrespective of math, science, CBSE, ICSE, Cambridge. Everybody knows this. This is taught in school. What happens and what does a question look like when we're talking about competency? I'll pause here for all of you to read this question again, 2 minutes. So the question also explains that this is infrared, what hot looks like this in a temperature scale. This is what cold looks like. And it says, hey, now a pencil is put next to a infrared thermometer and I'm looking at the temperature. The tip is the hottest, right? Because we can see the temperature increasing. This can be a multiple choice question. If children understand friction produces heat, which all of us do, they will be able to apply in some unfamiliar context. Looking at unfamiliar context, and this is what hots look like. The idea is not talking about, by the way, I'm very scared of the word hot, Saloni, because anything which needs thinking, we say, oh, this is hots and this is only for 10% of my class. As if I'll have to go to heaven and solve this question. That's what competencies can change in your school. These are, if you teach them, somebody can apply. Good part is of assessments like asset or anything which happens regularly as key stage assessment is, your children should not go out in real world and suddenly face this. I'm used to have an environment and ecosystem which is non-intrusive, which is not failing me, which is continuously giving me feedback, and which is always coming back and saying, hey, why don't you answer this question? And this question can be a joyful moment. I can discuss this friend, but I can say, but what will happen now? Oh, I never thought about this, but maybe it is in room temperature. Lot of ideas can be built around it. So if you understand simple thing like friction produce heat, it's not about asking this for 1 mark question and saying this is easy and this is difficult. Easy doesn't mean that the question is a poor question. When children come back to us and say, this time the paper was very difficult, what they mean, unfortunately, often is that the question they solved this year were not the questions which they have practiced at home, which the teacher has not taken up in the classroom. I'll show you one more question. Talking about English. I'll show you what a competency question in English looks like. Again, this is sample from class 6 asset question. You don't have to read the passage and delve deeper. We'll be happy to share some of the sample questions so that you can practice it in your classroom also, I think, which is a request from some of you. Now, if we only teach, read this question, then go to the passage, who killed Ravan, and then go and underline Ravan was killed by Sri Ram. This is something else, but not reading comprehension. If I can't understand what is the voice, if I can't understand for who this is written, do these assessments help? Are they a good starting point? Yes, because this can influence how I teach. This can influence what I teach. This can influence what goes in my bridge course. This can influence what goes in my summer camp, in my summer holiday, winter holiday, homework, practice questions. And that's why assessments are a very good starting point. And look at the national data of 8,805 students. And even I'm showing you a macro and micro example of one randomly picked school and national performance. Nationally, only 33% could answer it correctly. And if you see the most common wrong answer, B, teaching his children about various countries, children just look at the map and they think it has to do something with it. So the reading has become so difficult. So if my children can read, it doesn't mean that I can read the first jigsaw puzzle was produced around 1760. That's not reading. That's not reading which is needed in our times. Perhaps during a colonial period, it would have helped us at certain point of time. And that's why you'll see reports like this, which SAFAL brings on table. Our competencies are changing. They will say, can children evaluate the status of the claims made in text? And they're asking at different grade levels, which, so for SAFAL, what they're doing is, and every assessment have their own style, they are putting questions at different grade levels, 2 grade level, 1 grade level, and it's saying, in this cohort, how is your school performing? I think this will make a lot of sense and will be easier and make sense when after, along with the report, schools also get the question paper. And if that happens, that makes it very powerful. But imagine I, as a teacher, I go to this skill number, let's say 4 here, and says, hey, children are not able to make inference and grade level text. And that's 52%. And that's moving to next grade level also. I can do something. And if I have, imagine I have questions along with this, I can go to this question, decipher them and say, hey, this is what is going wrong. Can I teach this? And as a teacher, it's my autonomy. If I don't think it's an important skill for my class, I decide not to teach it. But if I think this is data, this is where children are struggling, even if the question is framed well, I know the kind of mistakes these kids will make. I can build these competencies in children. Quickly, what can a teacher do? I think please connect your teaching and assessments to real life problem. I showed you the pencil example. Unfamiliar context is very important. All questions cannot be somebody went and bought. So real time question doesn't mean that Ram, Sham, Sita, Saloni comes in picture and we have apples and banana. It's like something which happens in real life. Can I observe a phenomena? Can you buy a Lay's chips packet and ask them to decode it and say it's a reading comprehension text? Can you give them a boarding pass and ask them questions on reading comprehension? Identify skills for each lesson. You can look at different paths. You can go to national curriculum framework. You can look at SAFAL competencies, asset competencies. But when you are looking at these skills, ensure these are visible. And when you're planning for the lesson plan, when you're teaching, and also when you're assessing. Key stage assessments are good. Similarly, have mid-lesson checkpoints also. After you have taught, and I think a lot of teachers use exit slips. Can your exit slip be a skill-based question? Are children able to apply this? Are children able to retrieve information? Are children able to infer the text? Very powerful technique is use the gradual release technique of I do, we do, and you do for skills, which means show them how it is done. Let them do together with you 1 or 2 questions. Then let them do at home. And that's how skills are. It's a very powerful, it's called gradual release. It's a very powerful pedagogical technique. Please talk about best practices across the world in your staff room meetings. And then along with this, please explain why and where along with what to children. I think we already do how and what. Do explain why and where, and a lot of questions will come as part of this. But I think these are few things which all teachers can start doing very immediately. And we'll be happy to collaborate and co-create some of them. together.
Correct, Prathur. I mean, I just went to the strategies. I mean, this would be the best things to apply into the classroom. In fact, when we were talking about the questions also, so I see many a time the questions being raised to me like, if for example there's a good question being framed or competency based questions being framed, and when the students are not able to answer the same, the answer they have it, ma'am, this is out of syllabus. Many teachers actually face this kind of situations where the students are like, yeah, nahi, this question is not into the book itself. So that's a major problem revolving. So just thinking out of the box, Pratra, like all this sounds really good in theory, but my class has a mix of slow learners and like bright students. And that's like a real challenge for all of us. So what do you think we can do in such kind of classrooms?
Oh, yeah, I think I've heard this as a student. I have heard this as somebody who trains teachers. Let's get something right. And this is research. This is not a sentiment. Obviously, this makes a lot of sense. It sounds emotional, but I'm telling you research on this. And I'm not talking about children with learning disability. That's not my expertise. But I'm saying generally, when we say student fails a test or they don't understand a concept, it means they have not worked hard yet. Now, this appears to be very obvious, plus please understand this is the only lens which we should see a child not performing. And again, reiterating, I'm not talking about learning disability. If Prakhar is not able to run for 5 kilometers, Prakhar has not practiced. Now, your ability to look at these so-called slow learners will change. And slow learners have certain phenomena. And again, not talking about children with learning disability. If I'm slow learner on such certain topic and I'll be quick learner in certain topic, what does it mean generally? These children, what they already know is lesser than what somebody else in my class knows. All learning is like a staircase. If there are two staircases missing, and that's why bridge courses are important, and that's why your key stage assessments and diagnostic assessments are powerful. You will eventually start seeing me as somebody who doesn't know. My motivation is a huge role to play. The persistence of academic setbacks, ability to stick a problem, even if you are a gifted child, and I'm talking about identified gifted children. And there's in fact an interesting book called Talent is Overrated. And there's a lot of research around it. If you can be the brightest person on earth. If you are not putting in hard work, if you're not persistent, you'll not be able to solve large problems. You'll be brighter than a lot of people because you have better background knowledge, you're gifted and all that. Self-image of these students is pretty low. I never, for example, for many years, I thought, oh, maths is beyond my. That's why, and we often come across ideas like, oh, has a math brain. As if Saloni also has a geography brain and science brain and Hindi brain and Tamil brain and Kannada brain. But Saloni, I'm sure, has a math brain and has an engineering mindset, and I don't know what all we hear. This is research, and countries do this. A system that believes in empowering every child have potential to do. And this is not rhetoric. This is research. Keeping standards high for everyone and supporting whoever needs support will do better than countries and schools where people don't believe that everybody can. People say, but somebody can become Ramanujan. I'm not talking about top 1% of the population. Ramanujan is an exception. Everybody with effort, right amount of teaching, resource, and motivation and self-image will end up falling in the top 10 percentile. I may not become Mozart. It's too late. I'm not talking about gifted. If I'm a learner who is having a lot of learning disability, that's again a different case. And this may sound very obvious because nobody wants to say, oh, I don't believe that everybody needs support. It should show in our actions, Saloni. And I'm emphasizing this. I know this is theoretical, but this is cutting edge research today. All children, irrespective of the starting point, can reach to the same learning, have different learning journey and can have same end goal, at least to 90% accuracy. And we see this in a lot of policies also, by the way. Teachers would have seen that maths, basic, standard 1 and 2. What happens when this was launched? I'll tell you Delhi example. 70% student, and this is a newspaper cutting. Students of Delhi government school opted for basic math. And this is not true for our privileged schools and private schools because of the ecosystem, because of the privileges I come from. So naturally, these children have now gone down to one level lower, because subconsciously we believe, and the intention is right, by the way. Huh? It's a very benevolent intention. I don't want these students to struggle. I genuinely see that they're struggling. But I too need to understand the solution is not to go to somebody and make the exam easier for them. And the two board exam has a potential to do this for a lot of underprivileged children, by the way. What can I do as a teacher? Please praise effort and not ability. Don't say, Prakhar, you are very bright, very sharp. Say, Prakhar, I like how you wrote this essay and I like how you wrote the bullet points and how you chose the colors. Continuously tell people that hard work pays off. Treat failure as part of learning. Please don't take study skills for granted. You have to tell me how to study. Giving feedback. There's a new research I was reading, very interesting. While we do not give feedback, and that's improving in a lot of progressive schools and countries, the research says a lot of people, children do not even understand what do I do with this feedback? What is the right way of taking this feedback back to my learning? Help them with toolkit for thinking. Please show students that you have confidence in them. And like I said, don't treat them unequally. Don't say, hey, Prakhar, if Prakhar has written a bad essay, don't come and say, Prakhar, thank you for submitting on time, but this is a good essay. Say, I like you have submitted on time. I like you have put in effort, but this can be improved. Give Prakhar the same constructive feedback which you want to give to Saloni. Our lens when it comes to competency building for slow learners has to change, and this is very important, Saloni. Over to you, Saloni. I think we have last 5 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, so actually, I feel that feedback is very important, like at every stage, and even for us, even for students, of course, and that makes and plays a very important role. So, Prathar, I just have a last question for you. Like, EIA has been working very much closely with schools in India and abroad to help them build competencies. So, how do you approach this? Like, and after this webinar, if I want to go back to my classroom, what immediate actions can I take to begin this change? If you can just guide a few points on that.
Since I do this day in, day out, yeah, it does this for last 24 years now. I think this is something which we strongly align, and that's why we are very excited about SAFAL. And like I said, the idea is not to help everyone here to solve for logistic issues. I and Saloni may not be the best people to answer questions like which date will SAFAL start, what will happen, where should I submit my application if this will happen. I think CBSE is the best person. But we can definitely be one of the best people to help you understand how do you use and leverage this key stage assessment. Saloni, we have been talking throughout the day as per our conversation today, and we understand this. For this framework, we need different strands. There has to be assessment strand, which talks about a good set of tests, good set of questions, good reports, good actionable feedback. There has to be capacity building strand, and there has to be learning support for students and teacher. When these are woven together, then we have strengthened competencies and enhanced capacities in teachers. And this takes a period of 3 years, and that's what we call asset ecosystem. And it looks something like this, where the academic consultants in Saloni is part of academic consulting team West. After the test is taken, throughout the year, there are sessions for teachers to help them understand misconceptions, diagnose and highlight specific learning gaps, take them back to the classroom practices in a very hands-on way. The webinar which we are doing is part of our subject webinars. We do a lot of pedagogical webinars. He does one webinar every week now. And you as a teacher can decide, oh, this is something which I'm excited about, I'll attend this webinar. After the test is taken, one of the learning gap and learning difficulty is called misconception. We have subject-wise misconception webinar, and I think one question was, how do you help us create questions? So as part of 3-year journey, the first year, it starts with assimilation of this information, understanding of these questions. Slowly, we move to helping teachers frame these questions. Like I know prominent group of schools based out of Delhi. What they did, they said now there will be 25% asset questions in all my tests. Then after half yearly, they said now these will be asset type questions. So teachers start creating it. And that the conversation has started changing. And I think CBSE is trying to do the same. They are saying we'll have 50%, I think, competency-based questions in 10th, and similarly in 12th, and ICSE is doing it. Slowly and gradually, this can change. We do in-depth pedagogical sessions, like we did on how to teach reading comprehension to children in very actionable framework. These are full-day learning summits we have done in Bangalore, Ahmedabad, and recently on computational thinking in Hyderabad. Then we have a misconception mentor where people who want to become teacher champions. This is a 4-month highly rigorous course, which is a certificate driven course, and there are certificates at level of participation to certificate level or level of excellence. But all of this is very hands-on. All of this needs, especially the misconception mentor, the 4-month course needs a lot of effort. There is an assignment, there's a teacher hour. After this session, which happens every Friday, people can come back in the teacher hour and ask questions. That, hey, I tried your idea in class, but it's very theoretical, it did not work. Or I made this question, can you give me feedback? So Saloni, this is the asset ecosystem. And if you look at the bottom of it, asset question a day, learning pulse, which is a newsletter, teacher sheets, and gifted opportunities. These are parts of the asset ecosystem. If you ask me what can I start with, I recommend everyone, and this is available for free, go to www.aqad.in. My Faz can give you the link on the chat box. Register here. Every day you will have access to one question. Take it to your classroom, put it in your worksheet, and ideas to foster critical thinking. Similarly, we have put teacher sheets. Children have misconception. There are almost 400 teacher sheets across English, math, science. Teachers can look at specific misconception which a large number of children have, and high chances your class will also have. Either you can ask and test this question, or now because you have this power and understanding, it's like a doctor already knows that if Prakhar's blood pressure is this, hemoglobin is this, cholesterol is this, ABC can be a problem and remedial. You already know that children will be thinking, you can change how you teach. So this is part of the ecosystem, and I'm happy to connect. Eventually, people can write to us. They can give their feedback, and we'll be happy to reach out to them, meet them, and talk about the ecosystem and how asset is helping schools to, and it's not about SAFAL, it's not about PISA, to build competencies, which will be visible every year on asset, SAFAL, PISA, and any international or globally acceptable assessment. Thank you, Saloni. I hope this made some sense in weaving the whole competency and idea of what do I do as a teacher with you.
Correct, Prathar. Thank you so much. I mean, this was very much informative and very much helpful of understanding like what actually SAFAL is and what key stage assessments are. Why is it important? Like now we should change our focus right from rote learning to where children actually learns with understanding. So I'm very much clear with the entire idea of SAFAL and everything. And hope the teachers too are. So, teachers, on behalf of the entire team at Education Initiatives, thank you once again for joining us. I hope you have filled up the feedback form with your email address and correct name. In case if you have any kind of further questions, feedback, or if you wish to explore how we can support your school's journey with SAFAL aligned assessments or any kind of skill building tools, please feel free to reach out to us. Right, Prachan, if you want to add something?
No, I think we'll be around for another 4 or 5 minutes so that everyone can fill the feedback form.
Yes.
We conduct this very regularly. We'll send an email to all of you sharing this link for the teacher sheets and AQAD. And if you have more questions around competency building, need more opportunities to co-create and collaborate, we'll be happy to connect eventually. But please fill the feedback form, because the certificates, we don't want to get your names wrong or incorrect. We want to capture it correctly. So please fill the feedback. Also, the feedback form, our company thrives on feedback. We're an assessment company. It helps us understand what is to be planned for next, and how can we do these webinars so that they can help all of you better. But thank you, Saloni, and thank you all the teachers for participating today.
We'll wait for another 2 minutes so that they can fill up the feedback form.
Guys, I think we can be here for 2-3 more minutes so that nobody loses this access of feedback form. Yes, Shani ma'am will be recording this session. You can go to the EI webinars and by Monday you'll find this uploaded. As Madhavi ma'am is saying, feedback form not opening. Let me also check. Ma'am, looks like an internet glitch. We'll share it again. Thank you everyone for the warm comments. Thank you, Dr. Pampa. Thirty seconds and we'll take your leave. Happy weekend, everyone.
Yeah, teachers, so wishing you a great evening and a great Sunday ahead. And more importantly, a fulfilling journey of learning and impact. Thank you so much for being a part of the call.